Welcome back to another Homemade Kitchen Restock. It's been a minute since I filmed one of these for YouTube and I'm so excited to get back to it. I just finished up a double batch of sourdough discard bagels and then I have a whole wheat honey oatmeal bread that I'm gonna add apples to. This is my working counter space. My kitchen isn't very big, so I don't have a lot of working counter space, so this is like my home corner. Most of my filming is done here too. One day I'll have a kitchen with a fancy island that I can set up the tripod behind it, but until then, this is what we're working with. Oh, hi pup.
Everyone's gonna be so mad that you're even allowed in the kitchen while I'm making food.
This is my list of everything I want to get done for this week. I did already make brownies earlier in the week, and then tomorrow I'm making French onion soup, not today. I'm not sure if I'm going to film it for this video or not. On the right is my list of everything that I want to make. So today I want to make apple wheat bread, sourdough discard bagels, and then turn some of those into pizza bagels. I want to make baguettes, and then I have a giant pile of russet potatoes. We bought 2 5-pound bags. I want to make potato soup, potato and cheese pierogi, mashed potatoes, all for the freezer, and then I need to shred cheddar cheese, and then tomorrow I'm gonna make French onion soup. So that's my list on the right of everything that I'm gonna make, and then on the left I write the steps in the order of which I'm gonna do them. So I started with the honey oatmeal bread, and then I made the discard bagel dough, then I still have to make the discard baguette dough, then I'm gonna prep all the potato soup and it's gonna go in the crock pot all day. It won't be done till dinner. Then I'm going to make the pierogi dough because that has to sit for like 15-20 minutes. Then I'm gonna shred cheddar cheese because I need some cheddar cheese for the pierogi filling. Then I'm gonna make the pierogi filling, then I'm gonna assemble the pierogi, and then we're gonna flash freeze them. Then I'm gonna cube and boil whatever potatoes are left and make mashed potatoes. I'm overlapping every single recipe, and that's how my homemade restocks are the most productive in the short amount of time. That's a lot of food, and it's mostly going in the freezer. And this is how we manage to cook from scratch most of our meals, because if you're gonna go through the effort of making it from scratch, you might as well double the batch. That's kind of been my catchphrase lately. That's what I've been saying because it just makes the most sense. So we want about a cup of starter. I never measure my discard. I just guesstimate. A little extra discard isn't gonna hurt anything. Tablespoon of yeast. Okay, so we want a cup of water. We're gonna do some salt, about 2 teaspoons, and 3 cups of flour. Mix this up and check the consistency. So it's a good consistency, so we're gonna leave it the way it is. We're just gonna let it knead. So we're looking for a nice and smooth dough. And if you look inside, the dough itself is pulling from the sides of the bowl, so the bowl inside looks very clean. That's what we're looking for. Then you should touch it and it should not stick to your finger. That's how you know you've got the right consistency. So add a tablespoon of water or a tablespoon of flour to get to this consistency. This is not something that the mixer comes with, but if you do a lot of baking, I highly recommend one of these lids. Okay, so we ate down our freezer almost completely because we needed to defrost it. So I'm going to my freezer-friendly soups section of my cookbook, and I'm basically gonna be making freezer-friendly soups so I can restock our freezer. I have a lot of really good soups in my cookbook, but today we're making, yikes. Today we're making potato soup. So this fills up an entire crock pot. This is my compost bin. It lives in the fridge. Some olive oil. We pre-mince our garlic and pop it into super cubes. We basically just want to cook down the onions and the garlic. It'll take about a half hour because it is just a crock pot. If you're doing it on the stove top, it will take less time. All right, so we're gonna let this sit while I prep the rest of the ingredients. I don't peel potatoes just because it's a waste and we don't mind the peels and whatever we're eating it on. So I just want to make sure that they're really, really clean. Full disclosure, I did not go to culinary school. My knife skills are absolute garbage. So I would advise not copying my knife skills. And again, if not peeling potatoes bothers you, go ahead and peel your potatoes. Right, 5 pounds of potatoes, done. I thought it was recording, but it was not. I use Better Than Bouillon to make veggie broth when I don't have veggie scrap broth in the freezer. So I just spoon it into a Pyrex and then I stir it just until it's completely dissolved. This is what we use, it's so good. And I've got my ranch seasoning to add to it too. I'm gonna leave this on high. We're gonna stir it like once an hour, basically just like whenever you walk by it. I added 1 extra cup of water. You do want the potatoes to be covered by liquid. The lid goes on, and I'll see you in 8 hours. Okay, so now we're gonna chop up our potatoes for our pierogi dough. Again, I'm leaving the peel on, you do you.
I don't feel like it actually works in a food processor very well. All right, plan B. This was my first time using a food processor for dough. 0 out of 10, not a fan. I hate dough. I hate mixing dough. That's why I use my mixer for so much. I don't do the feeling of sticky dough on my hands very well, texture-wise. Put more avocado oil. I use avocado oil instead of vegetable oil. A lot of pierogi recipes use veggie oil. I just prefer avocado oil as a neutral oil more. Just doing like a knead position like I would with pasta. This is just taking a bit longer to come together. Okay, I am gonna split this dough in half. It is a double batch of pierogi dough. It is a lot easier for me when it's not that big. Sit. Good girl. And then the human tax. So these are perfect. These are just like falling apart. That's what we want. Nice and cooked, so then I can just squish them. All right, let's drain these. Half a stick of plant butter. This is still really hot, so I'm just gonna let it melt in there. We want this totally mashed. No, I don't have a potato masher, thank you. Pierogi filling or cheesy mashed potatoes.
I absolutely love making pierogis from scratch. These are super cost effective and I can control the ingredients used. They also just taste so good. They're also pretty easy to make, but they do take a lot of time. They are definitely a labor of love. You do have to always flash freeze them, otherwise the dough will stick together and then they will completely fall apart when you try to make them. And with my recipe, you can either boil them and then pan fry them or just go right to pan frying them straight from the freezer. Do not let them thaw on the countertop before cooking them. I've also baked them in the oven before and they turn out good.
Okay, so today we're flash freezing. This is 3 layers of pierogis. They're just gonna sit up here for like 3 hours, 2-3 hours.
I am really proud of this recipe and I am finally ready to share it. I've made it both with and without apple chunks and it's so good either way. If I'm adding them, I add them after the dough has had its first rise and then I roll it super tight before putting it into a bread pan. I've been eating avocado toast almost every single morning and this bread is super good with a thin layer of cream cheese and then some avocado on top and even eggs on top if you'd like eggs. This was also my first time using the Breville Oven Air Fryer Pro's proof function and I was really surprised with the results. I will have a before and after in a minute or two. This is my baguette dough. It kind of ended up being more like French bread, not really baguettes, but that's okay. I think it was just because of how long I had it proofing for. It definitely overproofed. But I did shape them like baguettes. It just ended up tasting more like French bread. It did taste really good and we'll use little slices of this for when we're making soup. I originally intended to make it for when we're only doing French onion soup, but we also had some with potato soup and it was really good. These bagels, they ended up being an absolute disaster today. Usually I get my bagels right every single time, but pierogis today took me about 2 hours longer than I had anticipated. So this was overproofed by about 2 hours. It was super sticky to work with. I usually don't need extra flour on the counter, but I needed so much flour to stop the dough from sticking to my hands. I honestly should have just turned this dough into focaccia, but I so badly wanted bagels to work, so they ended up being more like bagel thins because they ended up very flat. But that's okay, they still taste good. Okay, so for pizza bagels, I make them a little bit smaller than a traditional bagel, and then I don't put a hole in them just because you don't want the sauce and cheese to fall through. I'm gonna use the counter to build tension and then voila, add a little bit of flour to the bottom so it doesn't stick to the parchment and then they get to proof. And this is the video clip of them proofing. Honestly, it was really nice to just also have these off the counter so I didn't have to worry about storing them where my dog couldn't get to them. Like at the rise after proofing. Okay, so we're gonna make this, and then these are my baguettes. Usually it's not like this many moving pieces for a kitchen restock, but I think because I'm doing so much today, I'm just kind of all over the place. I'm also out of counter space. I quite literally use every available surface in my kitchen. Okay, these are definitely like really stuck together and like really stuck to the parchment. I will destroy them if I move them. So we're gonna bake them like this. I used my lame, however you say it, and I scored it like you would a baguette. And this is gonna go into bake. You've probably heard me say this several times, but I will never shut up about this oven. I use it all the time instead of turning on my big oven, and it's amazing. 200 pierogies later, I have a little bit of pierogi shell left, but I'm out of filling. So we're not gonna waste it. We're going to roll them out and cut them out into my little circles and then put them between parchment paper, and then we're gonna freeze them. If there's a day where like I don't have any plans for dinner, but like we have a sweet potato in the fridge, I could cook a sweet potato and then make a filling, and I already have shells done. I've never actually done this before, but theoretically it feels like it should work. We're gonna try, and that's what I do. Like, that's what my whole page is about, just like trying new things. I don't think pierogi dough will last that long in the freezer without anything in it. Okay, so I was able to suck air out of it so it's nice and stable. There we go. Now the next time I want pierogies and not cheese potato pierogies, I have pierogi shells all done. Okay, so my first tray of pierogies, they're frozen. So we're gonna divvy them up into bags and then go from there. So 12 pierogies fits perfectly in a stasher sandwich bag. Okay, so I have a huge stash of stasher bags. I'm really trying to make sure that I use them for the freezer because otherwise they just sit in my cabinet. This is 6 bags of 12 pierogies. We're gonna go put these in the downstairs freezer. Once the potatoes in the soup are fully cooked in the crock pot, which sometimes does take a full 8 hours, I like to add about 2 cups of shredded cheese to the top and then stir it up, and then you can immersion blend some of the soup. I don't always, sometimes I leave it whole. It's up to you. Also, now watching this clip back, I'm realizing how atrocious this cutter looks. I promise it's not that bad, but you can see I have a ton of crumbs and flour on the countertop, so the suction cups on the bottom of the slicer did not work. Hello, it's a new day. I ended a bit abruptly yesterday because pierogies took me way longer than I thought they would. I did not finish pizza bagels. I did not slice any of my bread except for my apple bread, and I want to make French onion soup today. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm also meal prepping some rice. So I've got rice on the stove right now cooking. And then I've got a huge pile of onions actually right behind you. And then I need to slice my French bread / baguettes, slice my pizza bagels, flash freeze my pizza bagels, and then slice my everything bagels and put those in the freezer. So not too much today. Today's mostly cleanup. Once I'm done cooking, then I'm going to deep clean the entire kitchen because it ended up being a bit messy. See, but like, look at my stovetop. It was clean yesterday. Okay, so now these are good to go into the freezer. I should look into whether or not vacuum sealers actually use less plastic because I usually have so much soup in the freezer that I can't afford to like leave my soup in the super cubes, so I have to put them into separate bags. My husband usually eats about 2.5 cups of soup. I'll eat about 1.5 cups, so we always freeze 4 cups for dinner in portions. And it ends up being the perfect amount with no leftovers. And 2 super cubes fit perfectly in gallon-size Ziploc bags. But I wonder if a vacuum sealer would be less plastic because I wouldn't have like this plastic at the top. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you think vacuum sealers would be more sustainable than these plastic bags, because I mean vacuum sealers still use plastic. They don't really have reusable bags for it, but I don't know. My rice is done. Okay, the last time I shared that I meal prep rice, I got a lot of questions about it because typically you're not supposed to reheat rice, or you're not supposed to, you just have to be really careful with it because you can get food poisoning really easily from rice. As long as your rice is not at room temperature, you're fine. So like, I can't let this rice sit out on the countertop for 3 hours and then put it in the fridge. That will make me sick. But I set a 15-minute timer after removing my rice from the cooking vessel. Gives it time to cool off enough that it can go into the fridge, but not cool down all the way to room temp. And then I only reheat what I need each day, and this will last in the fridge for about 5 days. So me and my husband will both pull from this bin as we need it each week. Hey Google, set a 15-minute rice timer.
Got it. A 15-minute timer called rice. And that's starting now.
I found yellow onions for a really good price at the grocery store, which is what sparked my interest in wanting to make French onion soup for the freezer again. I definitely need to come up with a better method for cutting the onions though, because it felt like I was crying the entire time and it was honestly a struggle to get through it all. And fun fact, because I have a couple more seconds till the next clip, but I used to hate onions and I didn't start eating onions until about 4 years ago when my husband started caramelizing them for me. He absolutely loves onions and now I kind of do too. I'm not gonna lie, that was very touch and go for a bit there. That was like 15 onions that I cut up. It was 6 pounds of onions and I sobbed for the first like 10 minutes of cutting onions. And then all of a sudden I just felt like I could keep going and not cry, and then I did. So I don't know what happened there, but onions are cut. Now we're gonna wait for them to caramelize. I always try to keep pizza bagels in the freezer because they make a really good just like weekend snack, or sometimes even like a weekend lunch if we're not feeling like doing any sort of cooking. They're super easy and they're made with sourdough discard, and all we do is we take them from frozen and put them in our toaster oven to toast. I've been doing these for 4 years this way and they're so much better than store-bought. Okay, so my butter has melted. These have reduced significantly. They're nice and brown, and they are doing great. 1 tablespoon of white sugar and 1 tablespoon of salt. And then you want to cook these down a little bit more. This is my bag of veggie scraps that has mostly just like onion pieces. This is going to go into the freezer. And then I have 1 full bag of scraps in there already. Once this bag is full, then I'll make veggie broth, so probably like 2 more weeks. Okay, so we're going to be adding about between 12 and 16 cups of broth. I don't know how much is actually going to fit in there, but per 1 cup of warm water, I need to dissolve a teaspoon. So there's 4 cups in there. I'm going to put at least 3 in there, so I'm going to do 3 tablespoons in there and dissolve it in there. Then I just have to add water. 3 tablespoons of this veggie bouillon. Honestly, this is going to end up being like the whole jar. That's okay, because I always keep some in the pantry too. Doesn't have to be boiling water. It's easier if it's boiling water, but it's fine if you just microwave the water. And then I'm gonna fill this with water, only like halfway. Then I tighten this on really tight, and then I shake it for like 30 seconds, and you can already see that the jar is getting clean. Just to make sure that it's getting literally every ounce of veggie broth that I possibly can. Of veggie stock. This is a zero waste household. This took no effort. So unless you have issues with like shaking things, you should be doing this too. And then the jar is also clean to be recycled. These are super cubes that have just minced garlic in it. I always mince my garlic fresh and then freeze it. It tastes so much better than like the jarred minced garlic, but you can use the jarred minced garlic. And then these super cubes are 2 tablespoon trays. Amazing. This is what it looks like now. Just gonna do 1 last scraping on the bottom. This is the garlic chunks that's gonna continue to defrost. There's 3 of them in there. Ooh, do I smell that garlic though? So good. Ooh, I can't get another one. Okay, we're gonna get 1 more in then. Alright, another 4 cups of liquid. Amazing. Okay, let's get a little bit more broth in there. Perfect. 2 tablespoons of thyme. We're gonna do 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. I never say it right, don't make fun of me. Add some crushed bay leaves. We're gonna do some black pepper. Alright. Let's get this mixed in. And then this is gonna cook for about 30 minutes. I don't typically feel like oven broiling this, so you definitely can if you want to. I have done it before, but I don't always. I was out of stasher bags and reusable bags, and I didn't have any smaller plastic bags that I could use for the freezer, so I ended up just putting all of these pizza bagels in a giant 9x13 stainless steel container for the freezer. So that's how I'll store them, and then we'll just pull them out however many we want or need for each occasion. After dinner, once our soup had cooled slightly, I dished it into 4 2-cup super cubes, which was great because it made another 4 meals for us. I let these cool slightly on the countertop, I'm talking like 10 minutes tops, and then I made room for them in our freezer and froze them overnight before moving them out of super cubes the next day. The dream is to have enough super cubes that I can keep the cubes in the super cubes and stop using plastic, but I'm not there yet. Let me know what you think about whether I should get a vacuum sealer or not. I have had a lot of fun doing this restock and filming it, so let me know if it was something you enjoyed. I do want to get back into doing these weekly or bi-weekly, so let me know what long form content you prefer, and just thank you for being here and watching until the end. It's definitely taking me some time to get back into YouTube, but I am loving it and I do appreciate your support. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and check out my other social media platforms if short form content is your thing, and I'll see you next week where I'm going to dive into Project Pan and my underconsumption portion of Project Pan. Have a good day and see you next week.